My name is Sajda Wendy Muhammad. I'm an international business and real estate developer and an urban historic preservationist, and I'm a new member of the FSIC Hip Hop, Sports, and Entertainment Task Force, and I'm excited to be here this afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Emmanuel Epi. I'm a proud educator here in DC, as well as a director of student programs at the Thurgood Marshall Center Trust, and a proud alumni of Morgan State University. And I'm also proud to be here, as well as a member of the task force as well. So let's have a good conversation.
Great. So, you know, I'm not going to belabor with a bunch of prologue. I'll start with you, Wendy. You know, we've had this conversation. I've talked to both of you guys about this. One of the things we realized talking to Dr. Steele at SCLC is that there's a lack of engagement by the entertainment community, particularly hip hop, in policy and in progress. And the question is why? I mean, what, you know, do they not see the value? Do they not see the risk? What's causing that to be the case, that we don't have more engagement?
Well, I think we have to start with, let's go back to the origins, because when you go back to the civil rights movement, there were plenty of black entertainers who supported the civil rights movement, from Harry Belafonte to Aretha Franklin. They really fueled the movement. And then the civil rights members and the Great Migrationists, they had children who, after their parents had brought into the hope of the Great Migration, they moved from the South to the North into these, what became these urban jungles, and said, wait a minute, does anybody know what's happening up here in these cities? And so they started to rap about it, started specifically in New York. And so the children of these conscious people started to tell the world what they were experiencing, how they were living, police brutality, all of the conditions that they were dealing with, the redlining. They started having conversations through music about that. And then over time, we lost control of the industry. And when we lost control of the industry, we lost control of our ability to underwrite movements, just like the other entertainers did during the civil rights movement. And so even though hip hop is a $16 billion plus industry, and our modern day pop culture is now an offshoot of the people who came through the Great Migration, so rock and roll coming from the blues, hip hop coming from everything, country music coming from the blues and black folk music. This is all us. This is all our culture that is now being monetized, but we don't own it and we don't control it anymore. So it makes it very difficult when you don't own the dollars to be able to put the dollars where it's going to benefit you and your people.
Yeah. Turn your mic on.
So, as an educator, I have the pleasure of speaking with the youth, teenagers all the time, right? Leading a program called the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. I get a chance to hear their thoughts, hear their challenges, and what they're seeing. There's a depiction that hip hop presents. There's a depiction that culture presents, right? And a mentor of mine used to say, those, and it's an old saying, we all have heard it, those who are surviving cannot thrive, right? So much of our society, our communities are in surviving stage. Some are starting to get in the thriving stage. But when you cannot see the pot of gold, right, you're constantly trying to build the road. And so why are we not yet there in the seats of policies or authorities or thinking about it? Well, you just look at what's happening from the grassroots. You got kids who are trying to get out of different circumstances, adults who are trying to get out of different circumstances. We have the jail system that's connected to hip hop. And so those powerful forces create a culture that keeps people distracted to a degree, and also disenfranchised from true power.
Yeah, that's you said that to me before, and I was thinking that there's a lot of truth to that. I remember I saw Dave Chappelle on a show one time say something like, when he goes to schools and talks to kids about, what their future should be. One thing he says, someone was like, I don't tell people to be doctors or lawyers and say learn how to rap and tell jokes, do something, because one of the hardest things to do in America is to get paid to be smart when you're black. Right? That is just so incredibly complicated network, I think, to navigate. But if we don't figure out a way to because quite frankly, entertainers, as we found in the civil rights movement in the 60s, those were some of the bigger funders of the movement. The billionaires who fund like the anti-D&I and the reverse discrimination stuff, who are funding all these lawsuits, that's where the money's coming from. We have to find rich. We're not going to fund it with a bake sale, right? We're going to have people with money helping us. So, what would be your, given what you said about the limitations, how do we strategically start trying to talk to these people?
So, Kevin, there's a couple of things at play here. Those independent billionaires who are funding, for example, these DEI contracts are just that. The operative word is independent. Okay, when we have our hip hop artists and entertainers who they have money and they have the value, but they don't control it, it's very difficult to say to them that they should be on par with an independent billionaire who's financing these things that you're talking about. So I think maybe there's a different strategy at play. And no, we're not going to fund it with a bake sale. However, they have certain discretionary funds, and I always make a joke. I just made it over here, and I said, maybe you can't give us $1 billion, but give us what you just spent on that chain. Give us what you just spent on that Rollie or that last car that you bought. So that $250,000, that $700,000, obviously that's your discretionary income. Maybe utilize that discretionary income and apply it towards preservation of history, towards supporting legislations and task force and things like this. We get it that you can't empty the bank account because it's somebody else's hands in your pockets. We understand that. And I think that that was done by design. But at the same time, let's do something with the discretionary income that you are freely utilizing on a daily basis.
Daniel.
So I'm also, I like that, and I'm also thinking about the lane of thought of attracting bees with honey. When a person is a salesman, everything's a transaction. Most things are transactions, right? So I think when folks rise out of poverty, I would assume, you're making $30 million a year, you don't relate to the person making $100,000 a year. You just don't. World is totally different. $400,000 Rolls Royce, dude. We're not in the same world. But the person who's making that kind of money, our artists and so forth, they also have an eye for value. So I'm thinking, constantly asking for the monies is not always productive, but creating or teaching our current young people to create value creates attraction. Okay. And now it brings folks who have resources to the table because it's something they want to be a part of or something they want to leverage. But then teaching our young people not to make the same mistakes as some of the predecessors, the former artists, who sold a lot of their intellectual property and rights and things of that nature, but teach them how to control what they create. Teach those skills. And then also when you have those folks, even within our community, who come to the table, now it's like, my man, let's have a realistic conversation. I know I'm only making $30,000 a year, but I have an attorney, right? Who can look over some of this paperwork, just what goes into growing your entity. And that's something I think within our culture, we have to improve that acumen. Then it makes it even that much more attractive for the folks who have resources to come and do business and then give. Because I'm seeing the challenge at the same time. You hear people talking about, I think Jay-Z had a conversation with Kevin Hart where he mentioned the challenges he has of giving money to family, you know? And different artists mention that people always asking, gimme, gimme, gimme. It's like, why don't you grow it? So that you have these two schools of thought. Why should I just give to you? Because you're a nonprofit? And even though the answer is yes, right, because your value wants to support this, you don't have many that would just freely say, here. It's always, well, what can you do for me at the same time? And I think we also have to cater to that, unfortunately. It's the truth, to a degree. So I think we continue to ask, continue to grow our value, and do both, or whatever other strategies out there, simultaneously in a responsible manner.
What would growing value look like to you? Give me an example.
So I'll give an example. I have a young mentee who is a senior in high school. She's also president of her school, student government. She's also a designer, a model, captain of her robotics team. And we've put on now 3 fashion shows. And those 3 fashion shows, her shows, orchestrating everything. She included a whole bunch of different designers, vendors, local rap artists, DJs, and invited a bunch of different schools to come out, creating an atmosphere, as well as local city council members as well. So you bring in all the different stakeholders to the table. That's value.
Okay.
And this is a child, right? So it's possible that we can continue to see more of these efforts duplicated.
I see. So invest in the young people, help them create value in that way, and then maybe some of the artists and entertainers will come and underwrite that. And then what do we do about some of the money that is needed from a policy change standpoint, though? Are we saying we continue to invest in the youth and ignore the money that we need from a policy change standpoint? Because what I'm about, I get what you're saying, and I understand we have to battle that school of thought, because I've heard that too. But somehow we have to convince not just our artists and entertainers with money, but people with a certain discretionary income to invest. And I'll use myself as an example. I invested in the preservation and creation of a museum. So I bought the Honorable Elijah Muhammad House Museum in Chicago. I invested $5 million of my own money because I knew I couldn't just go out and say to people, here, come and make a donation. But once I started doing that and people started to see it, then they said, oh, what's that? Oh, I want to make a donation, or oh, I want to come, or oh, I want to bring something to the table. So I think it's a multifactorial approach. I agree with you, getting value with the youth and all of that. But then also, you know, how much skin in the game are we putting in, those of us that do have a certain amount of money that we can invest? I know you have your own independent school, and you know, people need to see that as well, because sometimes when people see, oh, okay, they invested, they went all in, all right, let me go ahead and give something, because now they see you got skin in the game. It's like getting a record deal, right? In the 90s, you had to show how many sales you had before they would give you a deal.
So tying in both of these conversations, because the people, like, so the independent billionaires who are spending money to reverse the gains, are you saying that they care, they see more value in hurting us than we see value in helping ourselves?
I don't even know if it's that black and white. They just see more value in their agenda. Mm-hmm. And their agenda is a self-serving agenda that, yes, in fact, it does hurt us, but they see more value in their agenda than we see value in our agenda. Or if we have an agenda, it's not an agenda that is necessarily going to support us as a community or as a whole.
The question is, that, we were saying we're having to figure out value for people in entertainment to be a part of the policy apparatus. And the question is, the people who are funding these lawsuits to ND and I and end affirmative action seem to find a lot of value in that for themselves. So they value taking our rights away more than we value protecting our rights. And so how do you quantify that for someone in the entertainment business?
Within hip hop, right? I grew up with Tupac and Biggie, right? It's my era. Grew up with the R&B wars, right? And all that kind of thing. And people you want to have some sort of validation that you're somebody. And so I think, with the folks who already have the resources, they already have a set agenda. Like you were saying, I love that word. The agenda's already set. We're still trying to find ourselves. So we're already behind. Slavery is slavery. It happened. And a bunch of other stuff in between. It happened, so it sets you behind. So how do you get them to see or to support? Man, I think that's a great question. I think, it's a speculation point at this, because so many different groups are working on this and trying, right? A task force. You just have to continue evolving. That's all we can do, and keep asking.
Well,
Kevin, can I say something to that, to Brother's point? I think we also have to tell the truth, because we have a lot of sugarcoating, and we're so caught up in trying to be phony, and we don't really tell story. We don't even tell our own history. So most of us couldn't name our 4 great-grandparents because nobody told us. So we don't really tell the truth. And I think what we have to understand is that this system that we're in is morphing and falling into something else. And so we have to accept that. It's done that in the past, and it's doing that now.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, because we don't have an agenda, we're just kind of sitting here like, wait a minute, hold on. But there are these people with these agendas who know, oh, this world that y'all living in, that's already gone. So we're going to have different ways of valuing things. We're going to have a different way of looking at things. Other things are going to be important. It's like going from horse and buggy to cars. At some point, the value system changed. Yeah. And that's what we're in the midst of now. And so that's what I believe we have to wake up to, because we no longer have anybody who's taking responsibility for us saying, oh, as Sister said when she was up here, oh, you're an asset. Now they're like, you've depreciated. Yeah. So we wrote you off. So now that the asset has depreciated and has been written off the books, we're sitting here on the side going, okay, what do we do with ourselves? Because nobody else is responsible for us anymore. That's where I think we need to have the mental shift.
So Congressman Jackson's here, so I'm going to call him up. So thank you guys for doing this panel. We talk about this all the time in terms of how we fund the movement, and so this was an important thing, so thank you.